Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Things are moving fast, but think back, if you still can, to 10 years. 10 years ago, what were Democrats saying about abortion at that time? A decade ago, well, they said they believed in Roe versus Wade. They said that abortion was never preferable, but it ought to be legal for the first trimester of pregnancy. They were not, they often told us, pro-abortion. They were pro-choice. And a lot of voters, by the way, agreed with them. You might not like it, but according to the polls, that was a mainstream position. But that's not where Democratic leaders are today. The party's new position is the more abortion, the better. Abortion must be available for any reason at all up until the moment of birth. As an op-ed in the New York Times this morning put it, quote, "Pregnancy kills, abortion save lives." In other words, it's better to abort a pregnancy than to bring it to term. That's their view. How many voters agree with that? Almost none. Most people find it disgusting, just as most people, according to polls, don't think taxpayers ought to be forced to pay for abortion. The Democrats running for president don't care what the polls say. They're for it.
Will you commit to abolishing the Hyde Amendment, which hurts poor women and
yes,
women of color?
Yes, and by the way, ACL, you remember, I got a near-perfect voting record my entire career.
I heard you did, but I'm glad you just said you would commit to abolishing the Hyde Amendment.
Right now, it has to be, it can't stay.
I will work to overturn the Hyde Amendment, which makes it impossible for low-income women to get access to reproductive care, including abortion services.
We have work to do until we get rid of the Hyde Amendment once and for all.
The Hyde Amendment. For more than 40 years, the Hyde Amendment has protected people of faith from being forced to pay for what they think is killing. Certainly, Pete Buttigieg would understand that as a man of God. Buttigieg has spent the last few months accentuating his personal holiness. Just the other day, he told us that the Lord strongly prefers him to Mike Pence. So where does St. Pete of South Bend on the question of abortion? Well, he's strongly for it. His position is that any restriction at all, for any reason at all, is unacceptable.
Most Americans believe that it should be up to the woman to make that choice. So by pursuing a radical, extreme agenda on these social issues, I think Republicans are doing the same thing that they've done when they've resisted a popular agenda on things like living wages or health care. It's just one more example of the extremism of the modern Republican Party.
So you want fewer abortions? According to holy man Pete Buttigieg, that makes you crazy and possibly dangerous, certainly an extremist. Notice that Buttigieg has no problem at all with Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii. Just yesterday, Hirono ghoulishly bragged about brainwashing middle schoolers to support abortion. Watch.
I just left 60 eighth graders from a public school in Hawaii, and I told them I was coming to a rally in front of the Supreme Court, and they said, why? And I said, it's because we have to fight for abortion rights, and they knew all about it. And I asked the girls in that group of eighth graders, how many of you girls think that government should be telling us, women, when and if we want to have babies? Not a single one of them raised their hands. And then the boys who were there, among the 60, I said, you know, it's kind of hard for a woman to get pregnant without you guys. How many? They got it. How many of you boys think that government should be telling girls and women when and if we're going to have babies? And not a single one of them raised their hand.
Imagine saying something like that to someone else's kids. Senator Cory Booker can easily imagine it. Like Mazie Hirono, Booker has no children of his own, but he is fervently committed to abortion. So committed to it that if elected, Cory Booker has promised to create something called the White House Office of Reproductive Freedom. The only point of the office would be to ensure that we have enough abortions in this country. Cory Booker believes that abortions are a vital strategic resource like oil or uranium. It would be interesting to know why Cory Booker believes that. Like most of the Democratic candidates, he refuses to come on this show, so we can't ask him directly. But we'd love to know what he makes, for example, of the abortion rate in Black America. African-American women are 5 times as likely to get abortions as white women in the United States. What does Cory Booker think of that? Is it something to celebrate? Should we be fighting to get the abortion rate even higher? What about sex-selective abortions? They're common. Are they morally okay? Would it be all right to abort a pregnancy if you thought the child was going to grow up to be gay or short or prematurely bald? Thanks to genetic testing, those may soon be real questions. Is there any abortion under any circumstances that's ever bad or even a little bad? Or are they all morally neutral, no matter what the cause or stage of pregnancy? Those are the most basic questions about abortion. Nobody on the other channel ever asks them. That's a shame. The answers would be fascinating. Molly Hemingway is a senior editor at The Federalist, and she joins us tonight. Molly, thanks a lot for coming on. So,
great to be here.
Before you did come on, I looked at the polling on abortion, and it's pretty much where it's been most of my life, which is probably a slight majority favor the rough framework of Roe v. Wade. Nobody's for abortion in the 8th month, elective abortion. Nobody is for sex-selective abortions. Nobody is for a lot of this stuff. Most people aren't for public funding. So why are the candidates so far off where the public is?
Well, it's a difficult situation for Democrats who are running for office because they are beholden to an abortion lobby that requires them to have increasingly extreme positions. And so you're seeing this, just as you pointed out, 10 years ago, you might hear something like abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And now the approved position that Democrats have to take if they want to have a good chance of winning a primary is that it should, abortions can take place anytime, anywhere, and that taxpayers should fund it. That is a radical shift from what we've seen, and it is far outside of the mainstream of American thought, but it is not far outside the mainstream of the media's thinking. And the media increasingly control our discourse, and of course they have been overwhelmingly supportive of abortion going back decades. David Shaw at the Los Angeles Times did a study of this in 1990 showing that something like 80 to 90% of people in the media supported abortion, and that is far outside of what the average American, thinks on these issues. But our newsrooms do not seem to care about matching American opinion or even reflecting it honestly. And you see that the same euphemisms that Democrats use as they're running for office are the euphemisms used by the media. We say reproductive rights or whether women can decide about whether to have children. That's because we don't want to talk about what we're actually discussing here, which is whether or not it should be legal to end a human life after it has begun, 2 months later, 4 months later, 9 months later, and now You're even seeing the certain wings in the Democratic Party saying that even if a child survives abortion, she should be allowed to be left to die and not receive any protection. This is a radical shift in opinion.
Yeah, nobody's for that. And I would say even people who describe themselves as pro-choice would acknowledge there's something sad about abortion. It is killing, obviously. Everyone knows that. That's not really up for debate. Can Democrats running for office admit that there's something sad, uncomfortable, depressing, maybe even wrong about abortion?
Well, it's a difficult situation for them to be in because they're not allowed to have that position, given how much support comes to them from Planned Parenthood, NARAL, and other fairly radical abortion rights groups. But what's sad about that is there are a lot of Democrats who are pro-life. There are a lot of people who, Joe Biden himself used to be pro-life. And to not have a voice in that party is not good for the party, but it's also not good for the general human rights cause of protecting life and protecting women and making sure that women with children are not treated as if they should be ending the lives of their children or not getting the support they need. It's important that there be a caucus in both parties for this most important civil rights issue of our time.
Of course. If you devalue childbearing, you devalue women. By definition. All very amazing how quickly this is going. Molly Hemingway, thank you very much for that perspective. I appreciate it. Allison Howard Centofonte is Director of Strategic Communications at Live Action. She was a counter-demonstrator yesterday at a pro-abortion rally in Washington. Centofonte was carrying a sign that referred to the fact that the Reverend Jesse Jackson was conceived through rape. Centofonte soon got attacked for that.
You're wrong. You're wrong, and you're the wrong gender to be wrong.
Okay. So,
all right, pro-life Barbie, walk the away. We're done. Exactly. Goodbye.
What about Reverend Jesse Jackson?
He's alive. And what the
made a choice.
It's choice. It's ancient history.
So she should have had the choice to kill him.
You.
Let's talk.
You.
Allison Howard Centofonte joins us tonight. Allison, that was quite a scene we just played. You've been doing this a while. Has the reaction changed to you?
Absolutely. I mean, there's an increased aggression from pro-abortion people. That was within 5 minutes, Tucker, of being at this rally. My sign did talk about Reverend Jesse Jackson being conceived in rape. I did want to present that and say, look, he was conceived in rape. Would we tell him he shouldn't be here right now? No, we value all lives. The other side of the sign, though, said love them both. And that was a really winsome message. There were even some pro-abortion women who came over, had nice things to say about that. And my shirt said, women's rights begin in the womb, because they do. And so I got a couple interesting conversations and interactions that you just shared.
It's interesting, though. Why the emotion? Why this among all the issues? And there are a lot of people say, well, it's a life or death issue, and of course it is. But there are others, health care among them, where people don't get this upset. Why does the pro-choice side feel this outrage? What is it about?
Right. Well, this is unlike any other procedure. And Planned Parenthood and NARAL and others say that abortion is just like removing a tooth. It's just like removing a tumor. Well, people don't yell at each other over an appendicitis removal, right? It's different. There is a life on the line here, and that's why it's emotional on both sides. But it's the pro-life movement that's saying, look, there's a life there that's lost. We welcome you. This woman, this poor woman, we want her to come get healing and not be so angry. But instead, she has to double down. And the sad part is she was probably lied to, Tucker. She was probably lied to about her options. She was probably lied to about the so-called need for this. She thinks abortion's empowering for women. It's not. That's what Live Action's been educating on. And we're now training people through an ambassadors program to get involved, to share a message, because that's how you change hearts and minds. You step into the fray. And that's what I did yesterday, just showing up with a sign to start a conversation. But we need to have it. We can't just yell at each other. And the pro-life movement's going to remain peaceful and loving and nonviolent till we see this thing through to the end.
Do you think the other side will remain peaceful? It doesn't look that way.
No, I mean, you saw Representative Sims a couple weeks ago attack pro-life sidewalk counselors. Live Action and other leaders went up to Philadelphia to say, knock it off, resign, stop bullying us. This increased hostility is concerning, but look, violence begets violence. Abortion is a violent act in and of its nature. It dismembers a child in the womb. It hurts a woman physically, emotionally. And so we need to stop the violence. Molly did a great job talking about this being a human rights issue. The question I had yesterday for this woman and for the presidential candidates, Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, that was there, was, will you draw a line anywhere? When do you acknowledge human life? So far, they haven't answered that. I hope they will soon. But most Americans do not support abortion through all 9 months like they do. They understand, maybe at heartbeat, maybe at pain capable at 20 weeks, but they're not like this. And that's a good thing. We're going to continue educating so that that momentum continues.
They don't want to have a conversation that includes specifics because they're horrifying when you get specific. Allison, thank you very much. Great
Thanks
to see
for
you
having
tonight.
me.
Well, the creepy porn lawyer was obviously exploiting Stormy Daniels from day one. Now he's charged with that criminally. We'll bring you the very latest from CPL's life.